This is the third video of a guide to historical research, developed specifically for members of the Fiji History Community who are interested in pursuing their own individual projects. In this video, I will explain steps 5 onwards, how to record and interpret information, and writing. After step 4, gathering information, you will need to carefully read and document the sources you find. As you do your research, it's important to make sure you record what you find and where you found the information, either with a notepad or pen, or electronically using a computer or tablet device. This means that when you look back at your research, you'll have a clear record of your sources. You may also want to return to some sources later in your research. Critical information from each source may include the author's name, the title of the source, the date of publication, the publisher, any relevant document number, since archives often have file or box numbers, and page numbers. When taking down notes, it's important that you approach it carefully and methodically so that you don't have to come back to the source later on. Writing clearly and accurately, and be careful to note when you are quoting directly from a source, as well as any copyright restrictions. You can see an example on the slide ahead of taking down some simple notes. You may like to take a camera with you to take photos of particular pages. Just remember to ask for permission from the archivist first. Alternatively, some archives can make copies of documents for you to take home. It's important when you're in the archives to consider how much you trust your source. Things to think about include where the information has come from, who has written it, when was it created, and what was the intent or purpose of the source. Try to approach all sources and information with an open mind and look for balanced opinions. This is called being objective. If you find a source that you are unsure of, it's a good idea to look for a secondary source to back up what you found. As you start looking through sources in the archives, you may find other files or subjects in the process. For example, you might be reading a letter and see that the author mentions a particular name, say Joe Bloggs. You can then search Joe Bloggs in the catalogue and you might find another record related to that name. Sometimes just beginning a search with one source soon leads to other sources and topics and documents. Step 6 is interpreting sources. And it's a step that begins when you start reading the sources in the archives and continues on as you begin to synthesize and write your own history. It's important to remember that historians do more than just describe events. They analyze and interpret information gathered from sources to draw conclusions about a topic's significance in history. This means that you need to ask questions about the reliability of sources you find. Identify any gaps in history or unanswered questions. Pick out major themes or issues. Explain elements of change and continuity. And locate your sources in a historical context of the time. That is, the economic, political, social and cultural atmosphere of the time. One way to think about this is to take a step back and ask the question, what's the big picture? What's it all about? Or imagine you're telling someone about your research and then they ask you, so what? Referring back to your central research question may help you in analysing and interpreting the bulk of information. This brings us to the final step, step 7, writing. It can be helpful to talk about your research with others and share, test ideas, but there comes a point when you just need to sit down and write. Talk is cheap, as they say, and writing is a good way of formulating your ideas, making them concrete. There are several techniques for writing, many of which can be found by searching the internet. One is called morning papers and is similar to writing a journal. Every morning, before doing anything else, write down anything about your research project that you're thinking about, and do this every day until it becomes a routine. Others might find concept maps or diagrams useful to organize their material, or even just writing out a plan on a piece of paper. Some find it easier to write alone in a quiet space. Others may be more motivated to write as part of a larger writing group. But once you actually have written parts or all of your research on paper, then you're able to share it with close friends or colleagues and get feedback and reviews. This can be a daunting process, but it's an excellent way of improving your writing and ensuring that your argument makes sense to other readers. I hope this guide has been useful in introducing you to the basics of historical research. The next step for you now is to make a plan. Set yourself a series of realistic goals or deadlines and try your best to stick to them. If you have any further research questions or feedback, please email me on nicholas.halter@usp.ac.fj. Good luck.